Roger, that's your bogey. What? I feel so fighter pilot-ish with my personal protective gear on. What's up, guys? It is Mark Russell, ISA certified arborist and tree risk assessment qualified arborist. More to the case, I have my PPE on, personal protective equipment, because today we're going to talk about tree risk assessment. So I have to apologize. I have been away from YouTube, chasing storms all around the southeast, pulling trees off houses in both Wilmington and Panama City. So I think I made one video and I have not responded to a lot of the comments, which I apologize. But as you can tell, for the very first time, I am coming to you from, a studio with lights and a microphone, which I'm kind of excited about. So the goal is, guys, I'm going to start pumping out more content. I hope I don't get too wordy, but the nice thing is at least the cool thing is I can do stuff like this right here, which will show you, wait, what the heck? Oh, there it is, which will show you illustrations, which is a great thing. So let's get right to it. And what we're going to talk about today is tree risk assessment qualification, TRAQ, from the ISA. Brief history of two things. Number one, myself. So my company is 770 Arborist. We work on the north side of Atlanta. We do tree risk assessments, removal. We do some plant healthcare. And my history is in 97. I owned this company. I started a company called 404 Cut Tree, right? And so you can kind of look at the difference. Like one is 770 Arborist, and the other brand was 404 Cut Tree. Now, in the course of my career, where would you think that I would be more likely to recommend removing a tree? Now, of course, Bob Delbridge, who bought the company from me, absolutely did not function in the capacity of, he brought such an awesome level of customer service. Save a Tree, I think, has now taken over that company, and they're awesome as well. The point being is this. The reason I bring it up is that you watching this video are probably like, hey, this tree guy just told me that the tree needs to come down, feels a little weird, maybe a little gross. Does it really need to come down? So why? So you're feeling, I need a second opinion, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm telling you that the ISA has set up this course called the Traq course, Tree Risk Assessment Qualification, for one simple purpose. And that is to put actionable, usable handles to manipulate, understand the real risk of a tree. So, of a tree impacting a target. Let's cut right to it because we're at 3 minutes. Oh my goodness. Let's cut to it. So, basically in tree risk assessment, there are 4 elements that we look at and then we pump them through these 4 elements through 2 matrices, plural, in order to come to terms on what the risk is. And just like we would have like a nice computer where we could hit knobs and dial in adjustments, there are adjustments that we can do to our assessment and to different things to look at the risk under different circumstances. And that's why they created this. Because if you just walk up and you're just like, hey, that tree's in the air, it's risky, ambiguous, useless, subjective. We need objective, a way that one arborist can communicate to another in very clear-cut terms under very clear-cut guidelines to quantify the risk. Without further ado, 4 elements: time, target, impetus for failure, and consequence. Those are the 4: time, target, impetus for failure, which actually that one has 2 parts, and consequence. So time, how long are we talking about? The next second, the next week, the next month, the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years, the next 1,000 years. Guaranteed in 1,000 years, the tree is coming down. Almost surely in the next second, the tree is not coming down. Although every tree that falls does have that final second that's 100% that they did fall, right? It's kind of weird, isn't it? But there were a lot of seconds leading up to that final one where they didn't. Okay, so we need to quantify what's the time frame. Number 2, target. Are we talking about house, car, person inside the house, person outside the house, kids out on a recess, on a playground, cars driving by, people walking on the sidewalk, like people at a house. There could be 2 different types of targets even at one particular house. We'll go right here and we'll say, hey, here's a tree. This tree is, like there might be a pedestrian coming down here. So a pedestrian sitting up underneath the tree is one target. A pedestrian walking down the street is another. Another pedestrian walking on the other street is a total different type of target, right? So we have to define each target very clearly in our scope, in our assessment. Again, that's why, oh yeah, like the other day, someone called me and they were like, yeah, if the tree falls on my house, it's going to split my house into pieces. I was like, technically, if one little atom falls off a shingle, like atomic atom separates, then it split your house into 2 pieces. But it's just like mentally, we don't go through and really look at the actual risk. So let's keep going. Time, target, many different targets. Impetus for failure, which is 2 parts. Typically what we're going to do is we're going to call it DECAY. Okay, so we're going to say something like a decay pocket in a tree, right? Some sort of decay pocket. Here's a good example of a chunk of decay. And then on top of that, so some sort of weak spot in a tree combined with an external force, such as gravity, which is a constant. Is gravity a constant? I think light is a constant. Gravity probably isn't a constant. I think you experience less gravity in space. I don't know. That's a good mathematical question. I know the speed of light is a constant. Time is less of a constant. Oh my gosh. That gets into, if you want videos like that, go to thesingularity.com. I can't believe I just told you that that's my other blog. I like science and religion. I hope you'll still like and subscribe. Oh my gosh. 7 minutes into the video and I forgot to ask you to like and subscribe, especially after I just told you about the singularity. Man, I need to go out and do my videos outside. Anyway, so 2 things, which is impetus for failure, which would be regional weather conditions or gravity, and then weakness, and then finally consequence. Consequence is the very last one. Oh my gosh. I'm going to post it. You know what? I don't care. I'm online. I got 2 passions. One, and you'll see my other blog also, thesingularity.com, is the same setup. I actually set it up because my other blog. Anyway, but I do trees to eat, but I like talking about artificial intelligence and how it mixes with religion. And I know people don't like that. I don't care. You know what? We're starting to get to a place. Focus, Russell. Okay. You guys didn't come to hear about weird stuff like that. So let's talk about the matrix. Oh, hold on. Let me just say one last thing. So the ISA said we need to figure out, they went to the insurance, some consultants, and said, how do we make this actionable, tangible, give it handles, understand? And so the insurance consultants, from what I understood, said, hey, this is how we analyze risk. They broke it all down. Then we, some really super smart tree guys, put together all these pieces and put this course together. It starts with a Traq qualified arborist coming out, looking at your trees, looking at the decay pockets, the weak spots, etc. And then they do 2 things. And keep in mind, the assessor is just that. He assesses the risk. You, the owner of the tree, or the person who lives under it, or whatever, are the risk managers. 2 different roles. You manage the risk. The assessor assesses the risk, right? So the assessor cannot give the answer to piece number 4. Assessor cannot do that. You give the question number 4. Let's go into it. Here we go. Okay, so we're going to take an example. Let's see here. So in this example, we're going to say this big fat oak tree. We could say any of them. Let's go down here, actually. Let's go over to this oak tree right here, if we can see it. Actually, I did a job for This is pretty awesome. I did a job right on this road, but it was not on. Okay. Let's just look at this as an example. Okay. So let's assess the risk of this tree right here. Okay. So we go to matrix number one. Matrix number one would say, oh, that's not matrix number one. Here's matrix number one, likelihood of failure. Okay. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to say likelihood of failure on what's the time frame. The next second, very low. The next 10 years, definitely higher. So improbable, possible, probable, imminent. If we say likelihood of failure, and then we combine any sort of weaknesses that we see with that. So if we go to the tree and we look at it and there's like some huge, crazy decay pocket in it, or it's like this one's a great example. Look at this. This one is already pre-failed. It's got one chunk that's gone. Oh, that's so annoying. What just happened there? So like it's got one chunk that's gone. So you can imagine that there's going to be, once all of that dynamic shifting happens. Oh, I know what happened. Once all that dynamic shifting has happened, there's a good chance that, you know, it disturbed the other piece. And so you could say that this other piece might be a little higher, so of failure probability. So likelihood of failure in a, let's just say 1 year time frame on this tree. Okay, you would call 1 year time frame, no decay pockets noticed. I would say that's reasonable to say that it's improbable failure given the regional weather conditions. 10 to 20 on any given day, kind of uncountable in the Atlanta area, with an occasional 25, 30 mile an hour gusts somewhere around Atlanta by some little microburst. And then about twice a year, we have like a consistent 25, 30 mile an hour high wind day with occasional bursts up to 60 in little areas. Now, all of a sudden you're talking about, but that's our regional weather condition. So as long as we're not talking about 1 year time frame, giving that regional weather condition and tornadoes, like we're not going to count tornadoes because all bets are off at about 80 miles an hour. Dr. Kim Coder of UGA kind of talked about every little mechanism that a tree has within its structure to bend according to, and to give way to external pressure, the flexing of the basal flare, the flexing of the trunk, the flexing of the branches, the bending back of the leaves. You know, you see the palm trees, palms in the wind. Let's see if we can see that. And it's a great example because look, palms in the wind, they like totally will turn flat. You see them. I mean, you see the tree trunk will be, the trunks will bend, but yeah, right there is a great example. They like have this flexibility, and all of that is designed into the tree so that they can stay alive during these storms. So at Kim Coder, Dr. Kim Coder, he was basically like, hey, look, I think it was 80, kind of all bets are off, man. You have taken away the flexibility on the leaves. I mean, you've extended every single little area. So when we look at likelihood of failure under this matrix, likelihood of failure, regional weather conditions, we're going to take tornadoes out because they're above 100 anyway. So improbable, possible, probable, imminent, we're going to say improbable, maybe possible, but definitely not probable, and for sure not imminent because we don't see any humongo pockets of decay. I'm going to go back to the decay page because that's going to be useful. Okay, so likelihood of impacting a defined target. So once again, we cannot just look at the tree and say, hey, that's risky. What we have to do is we have to define what's the target that we're talking about, right? So if we're going to say, in this particular example, target being fence, like there's no way that tree, if you fall that tree, I think I actually have, if you fall this tree and you go radius wise, like that's about the farthest that you could even get that tree. I don't know how to close that out. Let's see. How do I escape? Erase. Okay, and then how do I do this? Hide cursor while drawing. Let's see. Oh, okay. So then check this out. Whoops, hold on. So then, like, even if you go over here and try to look at it from a different angle, and then we, once again, if we're defining the target as the fence, there's just no way, like, it's not reaching the fence short of a tornado. So then we're going to go back over here and we're going to say, okay, likelihood of failure, even if you called it imminent, let's say you had a monster decay pocket, but you defined the target as fence, then likelihood of impacting defined target, even at imminent, it'd be very low. So you come out with a combined instance of unlikely. Now let's turn it around. So we're going to turn it around. Let's say we call the target this little bush. No, let's get better. Let's call the target grass. We've got some weird deal where we can't have a blade of grass broken. It's surrounded by grass. Not one blade can be broken, okay? We call target grass. Now all of a sudden, we look at the matrix, likelihood of failure. We're going to call it the same. We could say if it's healthy, we'd call it improbable. If it had the super monster pocket of decay in it, may call it or the super huge hole in it. We might call it imminent. Okay, so if it's imminent, now watch this. If we define target as grass, but see, we're still going to have knobs to change here in a minute. Trust me, on the next matrix. If we called it imminent, then we would call likelihood of impacting target very likely. Okay, likelihood of impacting target very likely if it was grass, and likelihood of failure. So we would have a likelihood of impacting target, likelihood of failure. So if we said likelihood of failure imminent because of the decay, likelihood of impacting target high because the target's grass, it's wrapped around it. So then we have a combined of very likely. We're going to take that combination over here to matrix number 2. So matrix number 2, if you have a very likely, now here's where it gets crazy. If you have even a very likely, but your consequence, now this is where you as the customer define the consequence. If you say, Mark, I cannot have one blade of grass scratched, which, as weird as it is, I've had customers say this to me before. Can't have a blade of grass scratched. I'm like, okay, not one blade of grass will be scratched, but it is going to be expensive. Or we will crane that sucker off your. Oh, I had this customer one time, and it was like this beautiful lawn. He literally had $500,000 invested in this landscaping. And he's like, Mark, rope every single piece down, nothing but sawdust hits my grass, and that all has to get picked up. And we did. Everything came down on ropes. We hand carried nothing. Well, some little bitty twigs touched the grass. But I mean, literally, it was like a golf course, and we carried it all out. Okay? So that guy, he would maybe define this little bitty tree hitting his grass. He might say that's a big consequence. So he would say negligible, minor, significant, or severe. As the risk manager, he may say, Mark, that's severe. So in that case, guess what? We have an extreme risk tree. But in this case, this person says, hey, Mark, it's crabgrass. It's natural. I could care less. Then for that risk manager, the tree risk is low. Okay, let's go back and let's take it and say, let's redefine the target and say the target is the fence. Okay, so now all of a sudden, no matter what, you can't almost get there, right? So we go back, likelihood of failure, even if it's the super decay pocket, we say imminent, likelihood of impacting defined target, very low. So at that point, it's unlikely. So that combined instance is unlikely of failure plus impact. So now when we go to matrix number 2, at unlikely, it doesn't matter what the consequence is, because check it out. Look at this, you guys. You're at a low risk tree no matter what, even if the person says, cannot stand having my fence touched. Still doesn't matter. Low risk tree. Okay, so you can play with both of these. If you go to 770arborist.com, last time I tried to shoot this video, my computer froze. Thanks Apple iMac Pro 2018. Having an issue with my battery. It's really annoying. There's a battery in an iMac Pro, a desktop version. They looked at it and they said, yeah, your battery isn't communicating with your processor or something. It keeps on freezing. So now I'm 19 minutes into this video. Okay, so I hope it doesn't freeze this late into the game. This, guys, gives you a little bit of an idea of the difference and how you can kind of tell. I'll just tell you a few other quick points to mention when it comes to risk assessment. So one thing is, like, when you're talking about life as a target versus the house itself, the house can't move. It's always exposed. The person can move. So like when a storm comes up, they're mobile. Okay. And then just the idea of exposure. So a person in a house has less exposure than the house under the tree, because there's an element of protection of that physical house being in between the person and the tree. So that's one thing to take into consideration. And then also on top of that, I remember I looked at where are we at here? I looked at a tree. Oh, where was it? It was for a, oh man, am I going to be able to get I'm not going to be able to get it, set. At one point I looked at a tree for an elementary school or something. And, the point was, you look at, okay, there's like a ton of trees in the back of this, schoolyard, but how much time are the kids back here? So you have to ask them, okay, now, because obviously one tree fails, hits a kid, that's catastrophic consequence. I mean, if you're managing the risk of kids, I would assume you would say that, even though technically I'm not supposed to, but it's going to be bad. You don't want trees falling on kids. So the point is that you still have to look, what is this, a summer camp? Is it a summer school? Is it inhabited all year long? Is it, how much playground time do they have? Is it 20 minutes a day for 3 months out of the year? So all of these things are going to play into the idea of how much exposure do you have. Another thing that I want to point out is that sometimes you have the idea of other trees in front of trees. So like you go down here and you might say, well, I don't see a super great example here. But you might say, hey, Mark, what about, I don't know, wherever, you just have one tree. I'm sorry, Ernie Road is not giving me a super great example because these layouts of these houses are pretty sparse. Oh man, I like that guy. This guy has no more trees left because I took down all his trees, which stinks, man. I enjoyed working for that customer. Anyway, he will no longer be a customer unless I plant some trees. So, like sometimes you have a tree that goes in front, a branch that is like a big oak branch that has a little skinny pine behind it. And, the house is over here and it's like, it can only fall up to that. It's not going to bust through. So all of a sudden, the target being house or the target of the person inside the house, like that's a double protection, house plus huge branch plus light weight of the tree. And then one other thing to think about, guys, is consequence. Like if you're thinking about getting a new kitchen and you know that you're not normally, and you're going to define the target as kitchen and not your life because you're going to move yourself out of the kitchen anyway if you think that that's the area that the tree might fall, and you're like, hey, I'm pretty cognizant. I'm not typically in the kitchen during storms. I'll go downstairs in the basement, and a tree comes and wrecks your kitchen, and you are kind of a handy dandy person and you can contract it yourself, and hallelujah, you just got a monster claim that you can get your new kitchen done. There's no consequence there, right? Because you're happy. But then again, you're another person who just got their kitchen done. They're super busy and they cannot handle a claim and the disruption to their life. That's a totally different scenario. That could end up being a very high consequence, So like you go to either of those two scenarios, like if likelihood of failure is, let's say possible. And then likelihood of impacting target is high. You come to a defined, so it's going to hit the kitchen if it fails, probable. And lo and behold, it does fail. And you were at oh my gosh, wherever it was, hold on. You were at a probable plus high was a combined likely, and then you come to likely, and the consequence, you want a new kitchen? Well, then you're at a low risk. you don't want a new kitchen and you can't afford going away from your work, that's a high risk tree for the same time frame. So each one of these guys is a knob that you can adjust. So the next time a tree service comes out and just looks at a tree and says, that tree's risky, now you have a way, a 24-minute and 59-second way of saying, wait just a second, tree guy, I got a video for you to watch. And that's what you need to do with your friends. Share this sucker. Guys, I need some feedback. This one's long, but I did go into it, and I am going to start going through these subjects. Guys, I'm going to talk about Leland cypresses and the fungi that's on them. I'm going to talk about looking at risky trees. I'm going to talk about honestly, all sorts of stuff. I just have not been doing it because I haven't had an easy way to shoot these videos. At this point, if you like it, if it's useful, hit the thumbs up button, ask me a question. I'll be more than happy. I'm going to really start focusing this next year, 2019, on getting more subscribers and helping bring more quality arboricultural information to YouTube, to the internet. Thank you guys for putting up with my slow responses up to now. We're going to take care of you. I think that's it, guys. I think we've gone over the matrices. I think I need to do this. We've gone over the matrices. If you guys have any questions, hit it up below in the comment section. And other than that, I really hope this has been helpful and useful. And if it has been, please share it, because it's been, a lot of time I've spent looking at trees, and I just really hope that that's a useful content for you guys. Thank you guys. Give me some feedback on what you think. Give me a time limit on how long you think these videos should be, because I am one talky sucker, especially when I'm in front of my computer. Okay, you guys, take it easy. Bye-bye.